Okay, so I'm ready to get started. Thank you for your patience. Like Mark said, my name is Cassie Obolero. I'm the sponsored programs trainer. And again, I'm recording today's session just for future use. It shouldn't pick up on any of you because I have the little microphone on me, so it should be okay. So hopefully you're all okay with that. I promise not to use your images or voices anymore. So today we're going to talk about using Cayuse SP to submit your clinical trial request. And this is what we're going to go through today. So I'm going to give you an overview of Cayuse SP. I recognize many faces, so I think a lot of people know what Cayuse is. I'm going to talk about how it's used for clinical trials. I'm going to talk about the things you should do before you get started with a clinical trial request. So what you should have in mind, how you should prepare yourself. We'll do a hands-on lab where you will actually enter and go through the submission process of submitting a clinical trial request so that you can see and get a feel for what that's like. If you've worked in Cayuse SP, I know many of you have, it's the same thing, but there's a few key differences in how you're going to enter or complete a few of the fields. And you can also skip a lot more fields for this process than when you're applying to sponsored programs, because not every field is applicable. And then I'll demonstrate for you how your PIs and co-investigate, like lead PI and co-PI, if you have those in your projects, would certify their requests. This is essentially how they used to sign the data sheet. It's just called certifying now. And then we'll also talk about what types of issues would be returned for correction, what types of things that you may submit in your IPF or how you may complete your IPF, what would cause that to be returned to you for correction and require reapproval. So there are a few things that could happen. And we want to make sure that we're transparent about that and you know what those are. And then there's a slide for Q&A, but if anyone knows me, please, I always say, please ask questions as we go throughout. Sometimes that's when the best questions are. Sometimes I may say I'm going to answer that later, but still ask it because I want to make sure that we get those important questions out. And then there's a slide for resources as well. Okay, interesting. I'm just having all kinds of issues right now. All right, well, what you should have as a handout, this will eventually get unstuck. You should have the PowerPoint. So this is a version of the PowerPoint that I'm demonstrating today. You should also have, can you hold that up, Valerie? You should also have your scripts. So that's what we're actually going to go through today when we are doing the lab. And then you also have the process document, and Mark explained to you what that is. So those are the three things that you should have. Let me just stop share and kind of try to redo this and see if it'll be okay. Yep. All right. Still recording. Yes. Yes, I'm still recording. Okay. So we went through the outline. I got stuck again. Okay. All right, fingers crossed. Okay, so I want to talk about what Cayuse is. So Cayuse SP is one product offered by Cayuse. Cayuse offers several products. They're a research suite, so much like Microsoft Office, they have various products that are used by different institutions. At UC Davis, we use two of them, Cayuse SP and Cayuse 424. For today's class, we're not going to talk about Cayuse 424 because you would not be using it in these types of situations. That's an electronic submission system that you use to submit proposals to federal agencies. Cayuse SP is what's replaced the data sheet and how you get that whole package to sponsored programs or to the clinical trials contracts office, right? So that's what SP is. It's the online routing and approval piece of it. It's going to be your new method for submitting your request, effective when they tell you, which I think they just did. So July 1st is the date. And like I said, it's online routing. So all of the routing is done online. There's no more getting signatures. That means there's no more data sheets. You can submit all your materials for review electronically. You can view the status of your request online, so you don't have to always call people or email them and say what's going on and wait for response. And you can work on or submit the request for out of the office. Your PIs can look at the request and do their pieces while anywhere that they have internet access. They just have to have internet access. All right, are there any kind of questions in general about SP?
Are the clinical trials going to be submitted in the same system that we submit all this other stuff and we'll review them in our My Proposals and My Awards?
Yes, so everything that you submit in SP, you'll be able to view in SP just like you do for sponsored programs. The difference is the proposal, even though these aren't proposals, you're going to give it a proposal type that's new UC Davis Health. And that's how at the intake desks we're differentiating what belongs where. But it's all the same system, central location, same way to access it. Good question, thank you. So before you get started with the clinical trial request, I encourage you to review the handbook that we've created for you, specifically for these types of requests. We're gonna send the link out next week because we just wanna see if we're gonna make any more edits to it. It is live on the website now, but I'm gonna do a follow-up email from the three of us so that you have some information with a link to this. Now, I do understand that everybody's busy and you may not have time to go through the long handbook. I think it's what, 40 something pages. So it is designed in a way that you can have it open on one screen or print it if you insist and be looking at a printout or a screenshot with instructions of what you need to enter next to the field or the screen that you're entering in Cayuse. So it's really designed to kind of work that way. So you don't have to look at it and study it, but you can have it open with you when you need it. Having said that, we encourage you not to print it because it's a living document. We're likely to keep making changes to it. And the same goes for the handbook that I did for the SPO processes. I encourage you not to print them. All the links are clickable. The table of contents is clickable. It's a much easier document to use. I have one printed, of course, and some people do. But if you do that, just make sure that you're using the most current version. And that's always on the bottom of the first or second page. You can always see the date and make sure that's the same as the one on the website. That's what I would recommend. Another thing is you want to ensure your unit is set up. So any unit that is going to need to have their approver sign off or certify the request needs to have an IPF approver established. And I encourage you to do that before you create your IPF to make sure that those units are set up. And there are instructions at the link seen here. I'll demonstrate it to you if there's time, but basically you go to right when you log into the main Cayuse screen, you go to Research Contacts under System Administration Applications, find the unit, and make sure they have an IPF approver set up. And that way you can ensure that your request is not going to get stuck in routing, that it's actually going to go where it needs to go. And we're going to talk a lot more about that later. And also have the complete clinical trial request ready. So before you start entering it, it's good to have at least most of it ready. You can start it and save it and come back to it later. So that's not an issue, but have the things that you need with you so you're not, searching around and wasting your time. And complete all of the fields in the internal processing form or IPF that are applicable, even if there's not a red asterisk. For this situation, you're going to be completing a lot less of those non-required fields than you will when you're submitting to SPO because they're just not applicable. So I always say, complete everything that's applicable and you're good, right? As long as it applies to your project, complete it. That's the way I look at it. Okay, so if there aren't real questions, we're actually going to get into the lab piece now. But I have some rules. So I hate to be, like a dictator or whatever, but I have some rules for our lab. One is please make sure you're using Mozilla Firefox because other browsers work, but you have to do some changes sometimes to your cookies and settings. So use Mozilla Firefox. You log into these computers as yourself, by the way. When we get to the lab, you're going to follow the script that we've passed out to all of you. You're going to log in as a fake user. So you're going to go to the testing site. You're not going to go to the real site. You're going to go to the link on your handout. You're going to log in as the person listed on your handout, Amy Admin. When we get to the PIs, you're going to select a fake user, a fake PI named Charlie Apple. So those are like the really important rules. Another one is that I'm asking that you stay on the same tab as us. Now, if you want to move forward, I'm not going to police you and walk around and see what screen you're on, but it's better if you stay with us, because often what I'm finding is when people don't, I go back and I look and see what they entered, and they've entered a lot of things incorrectly because they were just speeding through because they've already done it for SPO, right? So I'm going to ask that you stay on the same tab as us. If you skip ahead, just don't ask a question about that tab you're on until we get there. Like I said, I'm not the cops. I'm not going to walk around and look over your shoulder. And I hate to be this way, but we've been having in training some issues where I don't feel like people are getting the value of what they need because they're not staying with us. And the other thing I want to point out is this is the testing environment. It's what we call the sandbox because we play in it. The data may look real. Some of it may be accurate. A lot of it is not. Don't worry about it. Don't look at the role assignments. Don't look to see if your PIs are in there. Don't look to see if you're in there. This is the testing site. It does not matter. It does not reflect the real site in a lot of ways because this is our sandbox. It's what we play in. And I say this because I've had classes where we spend a lot of time going through that. So please listen. It doesn't matter. If your PI is not there, it really doesn't matter. Now, if your PI is not in the real system, it matters, but not in the site. So those are like my ground rules. But I'm going to do this in a specific way. So go ahead and pull out your handout, and you're going to log in. You're going to log in to the UAT site. I see some people already there as Amy admin. Everyone's password is cat. And once you get there, select Cayuse SP.
Oh, that's to sync your Firefox.
Yeah, I think you don't need to. Yeah, I don't think you should do that. Thank you. We all help each other. That's the other thing. When we're doing this, if you have feedback, not just questions or tips, let us know because we're all here to help each other, right? And what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about each tab before we start entering it. But go ahead, like Sandy, just click SP. And then go ahead and everyone select Start New Proposal at the top left side. If you get a pop-up window about 424, hit Cancel, but then make sure you enable your pop-ups in the top bar. So the General tab is the first tab that you create. And once you create this tab, the other tabs will populate so that you can start creating them as well. I know a lot of you have seen this, so it's going to be remedial. You want to complete every field that's applicable on the general information page. And that's spelled out for you in your script that you have. Whenever, in this instance, we actually have a sponsor that's not a miscellaneous sponsor. But when you're doing this in real life, if you find that your sponsor is not listed, you want to select miscellaneous sponsors and then give us their contact information and some other things we'll talk about later in submission notes. But you'll just keep moving forward. You'll select miscellaneous sponsor. When you're selecting the administrative unit, you want to be ensured that you do not select a unit that when you pull it up, there has parentheses with some instruction on it. For example, you'll see here that if you look for internal medicine, it says use the PI's internal med department. That means that you need to use their actual department. So you need to find like cardiovascular or HEMOC or whatever it is, right? You don't select internal medicine. Now, it will automatically route to internal medicine, so Dr. Albertson can sign off, but you don't add him there. You add the department, not the internal medicine. Now, when you're doing that, say you look for cardiovascular and you find what we have in this other example for code 049207, you'll see in parentheses it says use 049205, right? So what I'm asking you to do there is not select this code 049207, but instead search for 049205. And I know that's complicated somewhat. It's It's kind of not something we can get rid of, though. What's happening is many units, especially in medicine, have at least 2 unit codes, one that they use for payroll and the one that they use for their contracts and grants. And the profiles in Cayuse SP are driven by their profiles in Cayuse 424. So whatever department is listed in their 424 profile is the one that automatically defaults in Cayuse SP. They can change it in 424 to the correct unit, and then it will always be correct in SP. However, if it's not changed or they have dual appointments, you can change it on each of your internal processing forms. So it won't stop you, but it'll slow you down a little if you have to change it every time. So for instance, I'm going in and changing Dr. Cam Carter's to the Center for Neuroscience later today because his says VC research, and it keeps getting stuck because people aren't changing it. So I really want to point out, like, this is one of those routing issues that we see. Is that clear to everyone, or should I explain it or talk about it a little more? Because it comes up a lot. Okay. If you have questions about it, just let me know. But we're going to have an example, right? So right now, I'd like you to go ahead and, can you hand me one of those scripts, Valerie? I would like you to go ahead and do step 4 all the way from A to M. And then I'll check back with you and show you what you should have on your screen. So just take a couple moments and do that, please. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and feel free to keep entering if you're not done. I just want to show you what it should be. And of course, now it's going to freeze on me. Hold on real quick. So on your screen, on the top for the sponsor information, you should have Merck and Company, Inc. And then the rest of it under sponsor information is blank for you because it's really not applicable to what you're doing. The general proposal information, you should have med, psych, and behavioral sciences, not psychiatry. I'm hoping maybe you searched and you saw psychiatry has one of those informative parentheses. And then the primary admin contact for this is Amy admin. You would be listing whoever it is that needs to be contacted if the contracts office has questions, right, about this. That's who goes there. All right. I was saying how the short project name is a little different. So in these instances, you're always going to enter the protocol number. It's an internal identifier is what that field is. Your project start and end date should always match the UBT. Your proposal type, when you're submitting anything to the contracts office, you're going to select new UC Davis Health. Even if it's amendment or something like that, you're always going to select new UC Davis Health. That is how we know it belongs in the contracts office and not SPO. If you select the incorrect proposal type, it's going to slow down that intake because we're going to probably assign it in SPO and then figure out that it doesn't belong with us and have to get it over to them. Is probably what would happen. So that's going to eat into your review time. The submission deadline, you're going to select the current date just because you don't really have a sponsored deadline in these cases. The submission type, you're going to skip, so you don't have to enter anything there. And the title of the project is always going to be, so that's that bottom one is always going to be the protocol number and the full protocol title. You're never, ever going to select create a paired proposal or pair with 424, even when you're applying to SPO. You're never going to select that. And then you're just going to select save. And as long as you entered everything correctly, you should see tabs over to the left with the one will have a green check mark. If you did not enter it correctly, then it is going to actually show you what you misentered. Did everybody get that or have any questions or issues? Yeah. For the project start and end date, you want to put what's on your UBT? Yes.
So for now, pick any date.
Well, I think I put them, I think they're in there. Just pick it then. I guess I skipped that. Yeah, just pick it. That's fine. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so it would be matching whatever's on your UBT. I must have just skipped that. Thank you. It's a trick question. All right, so the next thing we're going to enter, so I don't know why this is staying up. Well, the next thing that we're going to enter is the clinical or the investigators research team tab. That's the next thing you're going to enter. And this tab is really important because not only is this is the internal processing form that we're creating right now. And not only is the IPF or internal processing form going to route to the IPF approver for the administrative unit, it's going to route to the IPF approver for everyone listed on this tab as well, unless they are given a proposal editor or other participant no routing role. If you need to give access to this proposal and the associated award to somebody, including yourself, you'll want to add them as a proposal editor or other participant no routing. And we're going to do that in the next step. I believe in these cases, anyone who needs to do a Form 800 is who you should be listing here when it comes to the investigators. You should be listing anyone who has to do a Form 800. The lead PI and anyone listed as a PI or in Cayuse terms, a co-PI is also going to be required to certify the IPF, just, like sign it. It's just electronic, like they would have done the data sheet. If you don't know how to calculate someone's person months based on their effort, there's a link that will help you do that. It's a spreadsheet you can open up. You'll have to manually enter what it calculates into the form and the IPF, but it will help you calculate it. Sponsored effort is the effort being charged to this project. It says proposal, but this project. The cost shared effort is not applicable for you in this case for clinical trials contracts, industry-sponsored clinical trials contracts. Allocation of credit is intellectual credit for reporting purposes. This is up to the discretion of the PI on how they want to do this, but it's a way to give credit to others that are working on this project as well. It's not going to affect the indirect cost return. That's all still the admin unit. It's more for reporting purposes, like if a dean or the chancellor is looking to see how many proposals a certain unit is involved in or a certain PI, or they're looking for experts on a topic to invite to a panel discussion, or I don't know, a hearing in DC. That happens too with some of our ag people. So it's important, but it's up to the discretion of the PI. My understanding is for these purposes, it's generally going to be 100% to the lead PI. The only real rule is that it has to be 100% across all key personnel. That's the only real rule. Any questions? We get questions about that quite a bit. All right, so if there are no questions, go ahead and complete 5A, B, and C. Okay, so just real quick, I've already talked about it a little bit, but you're going to add all key personnel. So anyone in this case for your industry-sponsored clinical trial contracts request, anyone that needs to submit a Form 800, you want to be sure to add here. You do not need to add all of the project personnel because remember, this is driving the approvals. So you don't want to add anything here you don't need to. You want to ensure the unit is correct for each of the people you add. You want to make sure that's right. So don't just assume that what defaults is correct. Did anybody run into any of that yet? Okay. Follow the instructions in parentheses if you do come across something like that. And we already talked about that a little bit. add those who need edit access as a proposal editor. And I encourage everyone, if you need access to that award or the funded agreement, add yourself as well as a proposal editor, because that's going to give you automatic access to the award. We've recently learned that you don't get automatic access to the award because you created the form, the IPF. Applies for when you are doing things in SPO too. So if you need access to the award document, just add yourself as a proposal editor, and whenever that award is built, you're going to have access automatically. Otherwise, someone in one of our admin offices, and when I say admin office, I mean SPO or the clinical trials contracts office, will have to do that for you, but we'll help you. We're not going to not give you access to your award. So we've already kind of talked about the language and things like that. It's really important. I'm sure somebody here has to have already encountered this issue because we see it so much. So it's a constant thing, but I'm hoping it'll get a little bit easier. Just make sure to pay attention to those parentheses, and I think you'll be okay. Yeah, Sandy.
Does that mean that your unit is automatically in that
So no, if you add someone as a proposal editor or an other participant no routing, it will not, the IPF will not route to their unit for approval of them. So that's the safest way to do it. You can add people in those roles and it doesn't affect the routing chain. Of course, if that person has the same department as one of the other people, it doesn't really matter, but still, I think it's just a good, clean way to think about it. So everyone should have Charlie Apple in Med, Psychiatry, and Behavioral Sciences as the lead PI with 3% effort and 100% allocation of credit, and I think it's 0.36 person months. Then you should have Amy Admin. I just left her in sponsored programs because it doesn't matter what her unit really says. And that's myself, that's all of us today. And we're a proposal editor, and we just have 0 across the board on everything because we don't have effort, we don't have person months, right? We don't have any of that. And then I want to demonstrate something on the routing approving units list when we get there. So we also added an investigator from internal medicine, hematology, and oncology, TED 1, at 3% sponsored effort, 0% allocation of credit because we're giving all the credit to the lead PI, and 0.36 person months as well. And I did this because I really want to show how the approving units list works. Is everybody good there? Yeah.
Obviously, I would choose it if I don't need routing, but because I know for the list of personnel, you only add the key personnel. When would you add other?
So the reason you would do, so okay, this list is for your key personnel and the people who need access, edit access to the IPF or access to the award. You can do proposal editor or you can do other participant no routing. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, so some people don't want to do proposal editor because they're giving somebody access to it just so they can see the award. They still could go in and edit it because anyone on here is going to be able to do it, but it just looks a little different on their screen. So it's really an internal process how you want to label people. Proposal editor and other participant no routing work the same.
But the screen, what the other participants see just doesn't get to
I'd have to double check, but I think anyone can edit it. It's just a label. It's just a title label. And those are the 2 that don't require approval. Yeah. So it's just, they work the same, but it's just a title. Like, so you can give descriptive titles to people. I mean, you're going to see they have GSR and admin contact and all that, which seem like that'd be great, right? To add, but don't do it because it's going to route to their units for approval. So we're not the only institution that uses this, and everyone has different processes, right?
or a routing to be approved, just look at the roles.
We'll go through that in a little bit. Yeah, we'll go through that because that's a little bit easier to do on a different screen. Yeah, we'll talk about looking up to see if you have your roles. Yeah. Yes, on my proposals. Yes, so if you're on this tab, the Investigators Research Team tab, anyone on this tab can access this from my proposals. Yeah. All right. Okay, so next we're going to look at the budget. And the budget, we're going to be pretty simple on. I'll help you in a minute. We're going to do really simple. So we're going to select the summary form You're going to enter your sponsor direct cost. They should match your UBT in real life. The F&A base should also be the same as the sponsor direct cost because everything in your clinical trial is subject to indirect cost. You do not enter anything in the fee field. That's always blank. And if you find when you're entering this information that the values are slightly different than your UBT because of rounding, you can uncheck the use calculated values box, and then you can manually enter those amounts because Cayuse rounds slightly different than we do, and you don't want it to be more than $1 off. So you can just do that. All right, so go ahead, if you don't mind, and you're gonna do number 6, A through I. Mute. Okay, so on the budget screen, it should say lead PI Charlie Apple. That was automatically populated with your sponsor. You chose the summary budget form because we do not need details. Your start and end dates for the current period should be the same as for the entire period in this case, because I understand that these are handled like with one budget period. So that's how you do that. For cost sharing is always going to be no in these cases. You don't have cost sharing. Your F&A rate for the current period, you should have selected, it's the 26%, right? It's the clinical trial rate, and that would have auto-populated into your entire project period as well, because you only have one project period. When you're doing these and you have multiple project periods, you actually have to enter the amount in the entire column. For clinical trial request, it's one period, so you only have to do that first one.
If you're submitting a service agreement, you guys know you'll click in that box and you'll use the 39%.
Right, so if it's a service agreement, you'll use the 39% rate. You'll click in the box and select the appropriate rate for what you're doing. And the accurate rates, as they change, will be in the system. So you're just selecting like the rate type. It tells you what it is.
They're all fee for service agreements.
So yes, you'll use it for fee for service agreements.
So that's not, no, so I'm just talking about clinical trial service agreements, clinical service agreements that would be processed by the clinical trial company.
Right, so
Totally different.
just so I get it on the recording and everybody hears too, that this is not going to be used for things that go to the business contracts office. It's just for what goes to the clinical trials contracts office, or SPO too, you know, for other things. But what we're talking about today is just those things that go to the clinical trials contracts office. Business contracts is not in talks to come on board as far as I know. Anything else? All right, so then for your budget categories, I always laugh because I didn't correct this. Your sponsored direct cost should be $250,000, and your base should be $250,000 as well. Not $25,000 as the screen shows. I forgot to add my extra zero there. So you're going to put the same amount in both fields because the entire amount is subject to indirect cost. The only time those numbers are different are when there's something that's not subject to indirect cost. For clinical trials contracts, everything is subject to that indirect fee, that indirect cost. So in your case, it's always going to be the same. And then it calculated our indirect cost for us, which your number is going to be different because, again, I have a typo. Yours should be quite different. And your total proposed cost was also populated, and your total project cost. Now, again, if you notice this is more than $1 different than your UBT, go ahead and uncheck those use calculated values boxes and just hard enter the information. That is completely fine. You're going to have that budget done before you do this because you're just taking information from there and putting it in here. And additional resources is no. Now, if you were using like the Primate Center or something, you would actually be selecting yes and answering some information about that because the Primate Center has to approve everything that they are used for. So you have to do that. But that's the only example I know. But you might have some other resources you're using that aren't in your admin unit that you need to include on your budget. And once you have that done, you'll just select save and move on. So do you have any questions about the budget page? All right. It's really quiet in here for a Friday afternoon. I have candy. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is the conflict of interest tab. And all you actually have to do on this tab is select yes. It is saying that everyone that needs to submit their conflict of interest disclosures will do so. They will determine which ones they need to submit, and they will submit it at the appropriate time. So by selecting yes here, it's saying yes. Once the PI certifies the proposal, the PI is agreeing, you know, that all of that's going to be done. So some department admins are uncomfortable checking this box, but just know if you don't, you're going to have your PI go in and check the box and then submit for routing. You're not going to be able to submit it for routing until that's done. I want to say, though, there's not really any risk to you by checking it because they have to, the principal investigator has to certify the internal processing form. And in doing so, they're agreeing to everything within it. So there actually isn't any risk to you, but some people prefer not to do it so that their PIs are really like, they realize, they go in and they look at it, it's not checked, and they're like, I have to do this, and then it gets them to file their disclosure. So it's like an internal process of, I think, motivation. So, yeah.
Also, beginning on July 1, we're not going to be accepting any paper copies of the COI forms. So your guys will have to go into the online disclosure database and do all of that there.
Right. So for the recording, effective July 1st, this office isn't going to select paper COI forms or Form 800s. It's and others. Do you take any others of the Form 800? You have to do 700U. Yeah. So those are not going to be accepted paper copies anymore. Sponsored Programs is already doing that, actually. And there's a link on number 2 on this screen that takes you to the eCOI system where they can file their disclosures. That's a separate office in the Office of Research, so I don't know a whole lot about that system. I don't support it as far as technically support it. I supported it, you know, the idea of it is great. It's a wonderful thing. And they just added to where the PI, I think they have to go in and create the project, like do the title and I think select the sponsor or something like that. And then they can add an admin contact, and that admin contact can go in and complete the rest, but the PI will have to go in and like certify it because that's their signature on the form. So they have tried to make it a little more user friendly, and it's the Research Compliance and Integrity Group that handles that if you have questions. All right, so next we're going to do our compliance tab. And this is where you enter the regulatory compliance information. So we're actually on number 8. I kind of, you know, just did number 7 talking about it. So on number 8, I'm going to ask you to enter some human subjects information because you're always going to have human subjects when you do these. And so you'll see that you'll enter the human subjects IRB net number. But go ahead and just do that, and we'll look at it in a moment. All right, so I think it just like has a lag whenever I pause it and then come back to it. All right, let me just give it a minute. Maybe it will. There we go. Okay, it's like just a little lag. Okay, so what you should have on here is under human subjects, you should have selected yes. You should have selected yes to have you submitted to IRB net. And then you should have put in your IRB net IDs separated by a comma. So if there's multiple ones, you can list them all here separated by a comma. If you don't have an ID yet, you can enter pending. That's fine as well. It will take text. You should have said no to animal subjects, because anything that would have animal subjects would be going to SPO and not to the Clinical Trials Contracts Office. I've learned a lot through this process, I have to say. And then for hazardous research materials, we're selecting none, because in this case, we don't have any. But if you're using pathogenogenic agents or anything like that, you're going to see that you need to select those. But if you don't have any, you select none and then save. And if there's any questions on what needs a BUA or what's, you know, what some of these definitions are, there are links there to help you with that, because there's a lot of information to kind of cipher through sometimes. All right. Subrecipients we'll just kind of do together like we did the other one. So in this case, we don't have any outgoing subs. So you're just going to select no subcontractors. If you have outgoing subs, you find them on the list. So you, just like you would add a sponsor or anything else, and you select add subcontractor, and then you make sure to upload all of the required materials as a proposal attachment. In this case, we're just selecting no subcontractors because we don't have any. And then once you do that, you can move on to the, I believe it is the foreign activity tab. And we'll go ahead and kind of do that one together too. So here I'm just asking you to go ahead and select no to everything for our practice only. In real life, when in doubt, select yes about export control. Because it's not going to, there's a common misconception that by selecting yes to something with foreign activity, you're going to slow your process down, your vetting down. But the truth is you speed it up, because all it does is it gives a flag for our research compliance and integrity group to look at it and vet it and see if it really has an export control or military implication or something like that, right? So when in doubt, you select yes. And on some of these, like I think for the sending material to an outside country, another country, when you select yes, you get a pop-up window and ask you what country or countries you're going to go to or send things to, and you can control select. So you can select multiple ones at a time by selecting control select on your keyboard. That's how you do that. But for our study today, we have no foreign activity. It's very clear. There's no foreign travel. And think about that. If there's foreign travel, there's probably export control implications, because what about that PI's laptop? What's on, they're taking their materials out of the country. So it's a common misconception. So just select no to everything and select save. And we're going to move on to special interest. So I don't usually leave it up, but I'm going to leave it up. So you actually have some instructions on number 11. And there are times, like you may be using human stem cells, where you would select yes. And when you do that, you actually get a pop-up for the protocol number. So that's pretty cool. I doubt that you're ever going to have scuba diving or operation of a boat, unless maybe you're working with Bodega Marine Lab or Turk or something like that. Turk was on NPR this morning. So you just answer all of the questions, accurately. In our case here, the only one we're answering yes to is number 5, because at this stage, you should always have some kind of agreement that you're working on. So when you're doing this, you're always going to select yes to number 5. The other ones could be yes or no. In most cases, other than number 1, they're probably usually going to be no for you. And then you have to select save for it to be able to move forward. All right. Okay. So additional questions. I don't even know where I'm at anymore. Foreign activities, special interest. So additional question, or special interest is where we're at, right? No, additional questions. It's funny. So I think my goal here was just to have you answer no to everything. It's not in your script, so just answer no to everything. But these are things that they're usually not going to be applicable to you. I mean, at this, you're not going to have a limited submission, so that's going to be no. You might have to anticipate getting new space, I guess, and if that were the case, you would select yes. But again, you just really answer these questions, accurately and honestly. And number 6 is you need to select health relatedness, because all of yours are related to human health, right? So you're going to do human health. And this helps for reporting and for some other things. And if it is relevant to other types of health, there on number 7, you can select it. But I don't think you're going to encounter that very much. I don't know, maybe environmental health. But when you have that complete, you just select save. And then you can move to the location of sponsored activities. And I really want to show you what this looks like while you're entering it, because we get some questions. So you have 4 quadrants on your screen. You've got campus locations, you've got use of ORUs and special research programs and core facilities and A&R, you've got domestic off-campus locations and out-of-country locations. Whatever you enter in all 4 quadrants needs to total 100%. And once it totals 100%, you'll get your green check mark knowing that you have it all complete. It should not equal more or less than 100%. If you're using an organized research unit or one of these facilities, then you actually select from the list what unit that is and then put the percentage of work there and select add. In our example, number 12, we're going to add on-campus locations. We're going to add 2 of them. And what we're looking for here is the building the building. So our work is going to be done in the Ellison building at 50%. And so you'd enter Ellison building, percent of work 50, and then add. And then you'll do that again for the Glassrock building. We're going to split our work between there. One thing I want to mention is that you never enter your subaward locations here. So if you have a subaward that's doing part of the work and they're in a different state or something, just don't put it here. This is for the UC Davis piece of it only. Yes, just select add right there. And then you've got both of them. Okay, so it seems like we're pretty good. So the next thing that we're going to do is the proposal abstract. And in these cases, you're always going to select no to the first question about sharing. So I'm just not even going to go into it. If you come to the SPO classes or watch any of those, you'll hear all about it. The abstract, just type NA or not applicable or not provided, you know, whatever, and select save. Skip number 3. For these types of contracts, it's just not applicable. All right. So the next thing is proposal attachments, and we're just going to talk about it. Feel free to go to the screen and look at it if you like, but I just want to talk about it with you. So the things that you need to upload are actually listed on the page, on the proposal attachments page under the second paragraph. So for industry-sponsored clinical trials, it shows you what to look at. I'm staring at your screen. All right, so the things you're going to have to upload are sponsor budget, and you want to name that document. You want to have sponsor budget in that title. So whenever you save the document and give it a name, you want it to say sponsor budget so that when it's uploaded in the system, that's the file title. The same for your UBT or your internal budget. You want to include internal budget in the same way. You also need to upload your protocol and an editable draft agreement, such as a Word document, right? Upload that as a Word document. If there are subawards, you need to upload the budget, the subrecipient monitoring form, the subrecipient commitment form, right? I think there's probably a few other things, but you need to upload those if there's subawards. You need to upload the complete exception to policy for clinical study contracts. And if applicable, you'll complete the PI exception form. So that's when your principal investigator doesn't have PI status and they need to get an exception. So you'll complete that form and upload it. We've revised that process just recently. So now the only signatures that are required before you upload it with your IPF are the person who's requesting the exception. And if that person is a postdoc or a student, they have to identify an academic senate member and get that person's signature. And then you upload that document as part of the IPF, and the IPF approvals also constitute approval of the PI exception form. I'm smiling because I'm really excited about that. I worked with Ahmad on it for a month or so. But you're not going to upload your compliance forms, right? They're going to be done in the eCOI system, and that's a direct link to that as well. So this is where you'll see what you need to upload right there. It's been added for you, so it'll hopefully help you remember. And then this is what it looks like. So I uploaded all of those documents I just talked about, except for the PI exception form because my PI has PI status. So I uploaded all of the forms, and you can see I've given them specific types because there are types to select on the document type. So that's pretty much what it should look like. Any questions about attachments or uploading things or what to upload? Yes, I know. So Form 800 needs to be removed from that. It's been on there for a while. So when we first started this, the online e-forms hadn't really completely rolled out. So we need to take that off. Yeah. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is go to our approving units list. So go to step 15. And if I'm just going to note, like once we get to the end, number 17, if you have any green check marks, you're not going to be able to submit for routing. But I think that's, you know, okay. Don't kill yourself to get all the things done if you don't have them. But we're going to do number 15. So you want to look at the approving units list. And this is just kind of like some guidelines for it. You want to review it for accuracy. The only non-admin or home units or units that have a parentheses with them should be listed because they're rolling up from another unit. And I have a screenshot for you to see what I'm talking about actually in your script because I wanted to point that out. So you want to have this move through the routing as quick as possible, right? So you want to have as many listed at number 2 as you can, because that means they can view it simultaneously, right? It doesn't have to wait. It's not sequential in that way. It always has to go to the admin unit first. Once the admin unit approves it, then it will route to whatever unit's listed at number 2 or units. And once the number 2 units have approved it, it will go to who's listed of number 3 and so forth. All of yours are going to have a School of Medicine admin unit. So that School of Medicine code should be last always. You want to make that the very last one. We have an internal medicine person. So the Department of Internal Medicine needs to be listed after the division, right? Or vice versa. I always get that wrong. So this is what it should look like when you've reordered it. Number 1 is the admin unit. Number 2 is Psych and Behavioral Sciences. That's the lead PI's home unit. You can see the roles off to the right. And I've reordered this way. And then I also have at number 2, Med Internal Medicine. And you see it has parentheses, use the PI's internal med department. But we know it's okay because to the right under roles, it says roll up from, and it has that unit code from the very first unit. So therefore, I know that it's okay to be there. And you just list it after the unit. Does that make sense? Okay, because don't feel bad if it doesn't. Like I get a lot of questions about this. Like this is something I deal with every day on help desk. And this is all because of those payroll codes that we can't get rid of. Because if we get rid of the payroll codes, it breaks our data connect. So number 1, you can't change. It is the administrative unit that was selected on the general tab. So they have to approve it. The administrative unit has to approve it. The IPF approver has to approve it. That's the unit that gets credit for the clinical trial. Yeah, it's not like you know, because you have the admins and they're working on it. It's more because that is who gets credit for the clinical trial. And then number 2 is listed there because that's the lead PI's home unit, because that's different in this case, because I wanted to show some examples of how this works. And then also number 2 is internal medicine because that's rolling up from number 1. And then I made School of Medicine number 3 because that's rolling up from number 2. Right? Clear as mud?
I don't think I understand the term rolling up. Or
Okay, so if you look over here, I actually have highlighted. I should have done this. So the roll up means that this says, so unit code 20, next to it has roll up from, right? And then it has the 04, I can't read it from here. So what it means is that unit, med, internal medicine, so internal medicine cardiovascular requires that division chief approve it, and then that the Department of Medicine chair, Timothy Albertson, approves it. So therefore, unit code 20 is rolling up, meaning it's being added because the other unit code is there. Does that make sense? Yeah, I know, clear as mud, right? Clear as mud. And the same thing here, like you see roll up from 20 and the other one I can't read. I don't have my glasses on. And so as long as you look over in the roles and it has the codes that are listed there are showing above it, then you know it's safe. That's really the best mechanism. Once you do it a couple times, you get used to it. Maybe you do have to do it 100 times. Maybe you have to think about it in your sleep and you get used to it. But we wish we could kind of change this around a little bit, but we can't. You know, we've gone back and forth on the best ways to do this. And so we're trying to provide you with information in those parentheses to help you know what to do.
I think a good way to think about it too is on campus, most departments, their chair has to sign. But for the School of Medicine, the dean has to sign, right? So this is the way for us to ensure that the administrative department is basically signing the data sheet here, and then that it's going to the chair, and then after that it's going to the
Right. Yeah. So this is the, as Mark was saying, it's like the built-in kind of routing, right? It's that automatic routing. So before you had to take your data sheet and get it signed by the admin unit chair and then the dean or whatever. Right now, it's just all building into the system. And so that's what the roll-ups are.
Yeah, what that roll-up is that those other units are signing it, and then after those are signed, then it's almost kind of rolling down.
Yeah, it's almost rolling down, really. That's a good way to think of it. Because, like, yeah, so the first unit has to sign it, and then the second, the one we listed second, unit code 20, has to sign it after that first unit, right?
The confusing part is shares in psychiatry. So why is internal medicine signed?
Because in my example only, I made my administrative unit cardiovascular medicine. It's not, you're not really going to probably do that. You're not going to, because I understand for you all, your home unit for your lead PI is going to be the same as your administrative unit. That's what you're going to do in real life. But here, I wanted to demonstrate the complexity of the approving units list for when you have other investigators you add in. Like, I really wanted to demonstrate the complexity of it so we could talk about it. But in real life, your home unit for your lead PI is going to be the same as the admin unit. So it'll just be one line. Right. But that's a different term of administration. So the administrative unit in Cayuse SP, and it's actually how the data sheet should have been completed, but was not. So we used to change it for you. We would enter it differently because the administrative unit is who gets credit for the clinical trial. It's not the CTSC. Now, in the primary admin contact, you would list the person at the CTSC that's going to work on it. But the CTSC doesn't get credit for the clinical trial. Like when they run reports, it goes to the home unit. So your admin unit should always be the home unit of your lead PI. Yeah, and we ran into this with clusters on campus, on the Davis campus, because we have a lot of clusters that support multiple departments. And on the data sheet, they were putting the cluster. And we just didn't enter it that way in our old database. We entered it as the home unit that it should have been, right? Well, now we're asking you to enter the admin unit as a unit that should be getting credit. That's what we've been doing in the back end the whole time. For what? Yeah, for non-clinical. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a little different because your does CTSC have a unit? Sandy, we'll look at that. We'll look at that offline. So the question is like the CTSC for their regular research grants. What do you enter? That might be different. I'll have to go and look and see how that's entered. But in this case, in this capacity of what CTSC does, you're just going to do the home unit of the investigator. But follow up with me after about that because we'll have to look in some historical data.
If they were to put key personnel, say from surgery, it would require the surgery department chair to sign it as well as probably number after the PIs.
Right. So
chair, it would be like before.
Yeah. So say we had another investigator from surgery, right? We would list some on the investigators research team tab, and then their unit would show here, and we would list them number 2 as well, because we want it to, because it doesn't have to go. Because is surgery part of internal med or not? No. So yeah, you would list them number 2 because internal med can approve it at the same time, right? You want to have as many at like the same level as possible because that's how you do the simultaneous routing. The only time you start messing with the routing is when you have these roll up or roll down. I like roll down better, but when you have these units that are being automatically included because they have to approve because of a child unit, right? Yeah.
If you're starting to enter these, especially when we first roll this out, and you're having a hard time figuring this out, I'm totally fine with you giving me a call and you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mark is.
Yeah. Don't call me.
so Mark and Valley are happy to help you. Yeah.
I know that the first couple times is a little bit confusing. I think after you start doing it a couple times, you'll start to get it. But if you're having issues, just call me up. I'll totally help you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good thing. So you have 2 good resources to help you, Mark and Valley, for your first couple or however many you're having trouble with. So, all right, cool. So this is like something I really wanted to bring home, and that's why I have these little these little boxes. And then I also did the screenshot for you in your script because it's something we see a lot. So I just want to try to do everything I can to help with that. All right, submission notes. So once you get, first I should say, once you get this, this list complete and correct, you want to select Authorize Unit Listing so that you'll get your green check mark. Submission notes. So in submission notes, if we had selected a miscellaneous sponsor or a miscellaneous subcontractor, we'd be adding their contact information in as a note. For this example, we did not have that, but you do need to add your CRO contact information if applicable, as well as the person at the sponsor that is going to be responsible for negotiating the award. So those are the two notes you always need to put in here for this case. And step 16, A and B, go through how to do that. So if you could go ahead and enter your notes, and when you get done, your screen should look very much like the one that I'm showing you. We're done. Of course, my screen is going to be slow because that's what seems to be the MO. So weird. All right, did anybody have any problems entering it or any questions while I'm waiting? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a question. What's the purpose of having the CRO's contact information if they're not the ones negotiating?
Typically, if there's a CRO, they're the ones who are negotiating.
Well, because we have a one line that says here's the sponsor contact negotiating agreement, and the second line was here's the CRO contact. So just wondering if the CRO is not negotiating, do we just not add that note? I guess is my question. Because in the training.
Yeah.
If the contracts office doesn't need to contact the CRO for anything, I would say it's fine to leave their information off.
Okay.
Sometimes your sponsor may not be the one negotiating.
Sure.
And so you won't include that information there. You include the CRO information.
So basically include the information whoever's going to be negotiating the agreement.
Okay, so get that on the recording. So for your submission notes, you want to include whoever's going to be negotiating the agreement. So if that's not the CRO, you don't need to include them. It's, you just include what needs to be included.
Yeah, if it's just sponsor contact information, you don't have to include the sponsor name. But if it's CRO, please make sure you identify who the CRO is in addition to that contact.
Yeah. So for CRO, be sure to enter who the CRO is plus the name of the person that that you're going to be working with. Yeah, perfect. That's good. Okay. So now if you have all of the green check marks, you can select Submit for Routing on the far left-hand side. And when you do that, it's going to route for certification and approval. So the principal investigator, the lead PI, and the PI are going to need to certify it. That's their way that they now sign the IPF that used to be the data sheet. And it's going to route for those certification and approvals. And once the IPF approvers have all assigned it or approved it, it will be in, the status will be admin office in process, and that means that it's ready for the contracts office to assign. And once it gets assigned, we'll talk about statuses in a moment, but then they'll change the status, but that's how you can kind of see that. So this is the screen once you hit submit for routing that you see. And another thing, I probably didn't put it in your script, but another thing that I feel is super important, I did this. You want to check the authorizing person list. You want to make sure that there are no blanks. If there are any blanks there, it's going to get stuck in routing because there's not someone set to approve it. You should email the help desk. It's on your resources slide, OR Cayuse help. Now, if you followed all of my instructions and you did what the parentheses said, you shouldn't see that. Shouldn't see that. But I understand that with these kinds of requests, you may be working with units that don't generally do research. They may not be set up yet. So I would encourage you to look and see if they are in the real site before you even start working on it, right? Especially if you work with some units regularly, just go ahead and see that. And you can contact the help desk and I'll help you get them set up, right? But it's just, I'm trying to get you set going on like a good foot. I don't expect you to have as many issues with that as we did with the initial rollout because we've already rolled it out to all of campus, Davis and Sacramento. But like I said, I'm sure that you're gonna have some units that don't do research that I missed because I've emailed everybody, but I'm not going to keep harassing people if they have no award data in our system. It seems kind of silly, right? So, but I'm here to help. So just email the help desk and myself or Sal, when I train him, we'll be doing that. We just got a new help desk member. Maybe some of you know him, Sal Mendez. He just started with us. So you want to check that list, and that's right there. I also should point out that not everyone on the list has to approve. So like you'll see the top one has like 4 people listed. Only one of them have to approve for it to move forward. And once they approve, you can see the decision to the right. It'll tell you who approved it and the time. I know it says the date. I think it says the time. And if there's a note, there'll be a link and you can click it and see what the note was. So also they may reject it. If an IPF approver rejects it, the status will actually go to reopened, but there'll be a note there, hopefully, of why they rejected it so you can make updates. And that's just at the department dean level. That's not the admin office process. That's like if a department chair rejects it. And I know it's happened because I've seen some in reopened status and we don't use that status. All right, so are there any questions before I show you how to check the status and how the PI certifies the IPF? All right. Okay, so these are the various statuses that you are going to be concerned with in this context. Unsubmitted is not submitted for routing. Think of that as a draft. That's when you can still edit it and work on it. Once you submit it for routing, it goes to department approval and process, and it's trying to get all of those IPF approvals. You cannot edit it. Then once those approvals are obtained, it goes to admin office and process. That means it's received by the clinical trials contracts office, but not yet assigned. Once they assign it, they're going to put it in under award negotiation. When the negotiation of the CTA has been finalized, they're going to make it pending award. I already talked about reopened, right? That means an IPF person rejected it. Not their office, but like a dean or department. Withdrawn means that the investigator withdrew the, we say proposal, but really in this case, you can just think request. Not funded means that it wasn't funded, and award and funded means it was awarded. So that's like that final one. When it's done, you'll see that. Okay, so I was kind of talking a moment ago about how you can see the statuses to the far right. So on this screen, I'm showing you that the PI had certified it, right? And it tells us when Charlie certified it. But you can see that none of the IPF approvers have approved it yet. It just says not yet reviewed. Down on the bottom is the status. So you can see that it was an unsubmitted status on May 10th at like 3:15. And then I didn't submit it for routing until June 11th. Wow, I'm slow. It took me over a month. But so that's how you can see when it was submitted for routing. And the statuses will continue to update there and show you. That's the status that this is currently in. All right, questions about status before I just show you what the PI needs to do? All right, so the PI will log in. They'll get an email when there is something for them to certify. They'll log in and they'll see this dashboard. And you'll see under certification approvals that this PI has 13 that he or she needs to certify. That's what that number means. Like the number 1 above my proposals means that there's 1 draft or 1 unsubmitted proposal. Those numbers are showing there's something that needs to be, that you need to take action on for sure, right? So they'll select the certification inbox, and then they can view the PDF of the internal processing form minus the attachments. But regardless, they'll need to select the proposal number or IPF number. Those terms are just used interchangeably. And then they'll get this pop-up screen. And from here, they can select to view the IPF and see the actual documents, or they can select certify proposal. If they go in and view the IPF, which I hope that they do, the certify proposal link is on the bottom where you would have seen submit for routing. So it's right there as well. So that is really what they need to do. We haven't had too many issues with that piece, but sometimes investigators need to just be shown or walked through once or twice. So I think it's good to everyone just know how to do that, because I always hate it when someone comes and asks me what to do and I don't know. All right, so now the question is, when we're gonna return one for correction, right? So the types of things that require reapproval all represent a significant change in the commitment of resources. That's really what's driving it. So if you submit an IPF for routing and key personnel or a subaward are added afterwards, which, I mean, you can't technically do that, so you're gonna have to contact us and tell us, then we have to have it reapproved, because that's a significant change. If we have an incomplete IPF, then we might have to return it for correction too. There's very few times in this instance where I would see that happening, because most of the fields you need to complete are marked by a red asterisk, so you're gonna have less issues there. But the thing I could think of is you might not do the budget tab, because the budget will let you leave numbers blank and you have to enter that in, right? Or your approvals could be wrong. You could have chosen a wrong unit, right? That happens. Or anything else that would really change the way that campus or department resources are being committed. The reason for that is their office, just like SPO, does not have delegation of authority to commit university resources. We have delegation of authority to make sure those resources are in place before we approve something. We don't commit resources. So anytime there's a change in commitment of resources that's significant, which is a bit of a gray area, then that would require reapproval by the affected department. Right? All right. And so how we do that is we just change it to unsubmitted status, let you know what needs to happen, and so that you can make those changes, or maybe you contacted us, and so we'll tell you that it's an unsubmitted and you can make those changes. And once you make them, you'll just submit for routing again. The department approvals will be reobtained, and then it will be reassigned in the office when they receive it. All right. So now these are the resources. So I've talked about the handbook a little bit, I think. So this is our handbook we're working on. The link is live, but we're going to be updating it, right? So we'll send you a revised link next week. We encourage you to always look, hopefully next week. We encourage you to always look at that link to make sure you have the most current version, because we may make, or they may make some updates to it. We want to make sure you have the most current information. We have a UC Davis landing page for Cayuse, and that's really just to help kind of ease or mitigate confusion about Cayuse SP versus Cayuse 424. So if you're confused or anyone else is confused, that link will really kind of explain the two different systems with links to them and resources. We have help guides and videos. Most of them are, if not all of them, are tailored towards SPO submissions, although we do have the industry-sponsored clinical trial handbook on that page, and maybe we'll have this video if it turns out okay. We also have a Cayuse listserv that you can subscribe to, and that just makes sure you are up to date on maybe if we have updated resources or an issue with the system or something like that. You'll get updated. Sherry mans that, and she does not send too many emails at all. We have a help desk. So that's the Cayuse help desk, and that's an office of research, but we can help you even in these cases with like moving things to unsubmitted if you notice something like that, or if you have access issues, you'll definitely want to email us. That's something we need to handle, because they're not going to be able to handle that. We have to kind of elevate that up. If you have any needs for help with the electronic research administrations that are not Cayuse, maybe you're using NIH Assist, then you can email the SPO ERA help desk as well. But anything Cayuse related should go to the Cayuse help desk. He's also on that help desk, so it's good. It just helps us kind of track our work. And then we have training sessions that we offer over in Research Park that are mostly SPO oriented, but we're always branching out on that. So those are the resources. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So after a project is completely funded, and then, for example, we add another investigator, so would we do anything in Cayuse?
So you get it's completely funded.
Yes.
Your contract and your agreement's all done, but then you have another investigator to add.
So
Is there a budget change?
no,
Just an investigator change.
because the staffing is different. because-
So when I can tell you what we do in SPO, but I don't know what you want to do.
Lori's the perfect person to answer the question.
If it's the PI, it needs to be, the contract needs to be amended and a whole new.
IPF.
Et cetera.
Yeah.
If it's just, you're adding on a key personnel, then they need to spend 800. And we don't monitor that or maintain it. We don't do effort in our office.
Okay,
So
so-
if you need to know, don't find whoever does effort reporting.
That's contracts and grants accounting, right?
So if that's accounting and COI.
Okay, so submit the form 800, but we don't have to update anything in Cayuse.
Right. Okay. So to repeat for the recording.
Unless it's a PI.
Yeah. So if there's a addition of an investigator that is not a PI, they just need to submit the form 800 and inform whoever in accounting does the effort reporting tracking. I think they might have a new system for that. But if it's the PI, then you need to get a new IPF and get the approvals done, right? We have a process for that in SPO, and we have them do it as an amendment. But yeah, this has to be, you still have to select new UC Davis Health because that's the only way we know to go there. But in your short title, I would put like change in PI or something like that. That's what we do in SPO. Yeah. So, yeah. But if it's not the PI, you just do your Form 800 and make sure it's accurate enough for reporting.
And notify me, because those will come to me to do the amendment, as opposed to we don't want it to, we need to somehow link it to the original.
Okay, so you know what we do? So you could put change in PI as the short project title, and then in submission notes, put the associated number, the associated SP number or protocol number if it was done before SP. So in submission notes where we added CRO. Yeah. And then that way you'll know what's going on. Yeah. And maybe we should add that to our handbook.
I will be.
Okay. So I will add the process, what I'm thinking I'm hearing into the handbook and have y'all look at it. Okay. Any other questions? That's good. That's one of the reasons we didn't want to like have this handbook out and printed and everything, because we're learning things in these classes too. Things come up and we realize, oh yeah, we need to make sure that's addressed. So that's very helpful. I have videos online on how you can look up your awards and your proposals. There's also handbooks and things. We cover that. We cover other Cayuse topics at our training sessions. They're most Thursdays out at Research Park in Davis. So that's not as convenient for this group if you live out here. Although sometimes I can set up a Zoom or something like that. But as you've seen today, that can sometimes be a little hiccupy. I think it's mainly because I'm on this internet though, because I'm on the health guest internet, I think is the problem. Yeah. So, but we do offer some of that. And I have, let me show you actually. I've got a lot of resources. I really don't know why this is. Okay, so if we go to the Spark training page, this is where most of my resources are. And down here, I have this interactive how-to guide. And if you click on it, it'll open up a window and you can get sound if you want. If you want sound, you can select the little speaker at the top, but you don't have to have sound for this to work. And if you just if you click login and access, like you're having login or access issues, right? Again, you have this up here so you can listen to it if you want. It says, how do I log into Cayuse SP? If you roll over, it gives you instructions, or you can click this and it'll take you to a short YouTube video. So I have that for a lot of different things. Let's see, let me return. so small. It's not even making it bigger. But so like here's, let's see, how do I get a new award entered? How do I submit award modification? So most of these are tailored for SPO, remember that, but they're still gonna apply to clinical trials contracts in most cases. You just need to remember, like if I'm talking about the admin office, like which admin office that is. When I'm talking about things that need to be uploaded, you know, well, am I doing a clinical trial request or am I doing an actual proposal? Because that's gonna be different, right? But I think it'll be helpful. There is, how do I view the status of an award? How do I view award documents? So the YouTube videos are, they're just basically like demos of me going in and finding it. So you can actually see where it is on the screen. And then in addition to that, now I have this huge, you've got a lot of other resources down here. So these are all the other like guides that we have. That how to interactive guide that I just showed you, if you click this, it will just take you to the written instructions that are in there in case you don't want to look at the tool. You can actually just click it and get the details. So that's how you can get some more resources on like how to find your award, how to find your IPF, things like that. Anything else?
They might want to write down their number because that's what they should use to contact our office.
The proposal number. Yeah. So if you, so if you are, when you're doing your IPFs in real life, make note of your IPF number, because if you contact the Clinical Trials Contracts Office for help, they're going to ask you what that number is. It's the best way. What I actually tell people when they contact SPO, I say, provide us with the Cayuse SP number of whatever it is you're trying to do. You could give us the IPF number, the proposal, or the award number, or the project number. But also give us the lead PI's name. That way, say you give us one number and we think it's the proposal number, but you gave us the award number and just drop the A. If you give us the lead PI's name, we can cross-reference ourselves, and it just makes sure we're in the right record. So give us the number of the record you're trying to deal with and the lead PI's name. And I would say the same thing for the contracts office. That's like, I think, the best way to go about it.
I think we can also search by the short project name, correct?
Yes, we can also we can search by the short project name on our end, but on they can too in their screens. You can too.
Remember your short project name is your protocol number.
Yeah, your protocol number. So your short project name is your protocol number. So you can also be using that when you contact them. Yeah.
And just to be clear, it's an IRB protocol number versus the sponsor's protocol number, correct?
It's the sponsor's protocol
Okay, I
number.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So it is this.
Yeah, so your short name is the short project name is a sponsor protocol number, and then the full project title is a sponsor protocol number and the title. And then when you're doing the tab, the compliance tab, and you put in your human subjects information, that's where you enter the IRB number. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great clarification. No. Anything else? All right, well, we're getting out like 14 minutes early, even with all my tech issues. So we're here if you have questions. Thanks. Thank you.